I hadn't heard her voice in 15 years. 15 birthdays, 15 Christmases, 15 quiet mornings that came and went without the sound of my daughter saying, "Hi, Dad." Before we continue, make sure to hit the like button. Also tell us in the comments. What time is it where you are right now, and which city are you watching from? I love seeing how far our stories travel. When people talk about time healing all wounds, they've never sat through the kind that just stays. It changes shape, sure, from sharp to dull, from constant to occasional, but it never leaves. Mine lived in a drawer by the kitchen window, inside a phone that still kept her number saved under My Girl. I never deleted it. Couldn't. Our last conversation still echoes sometimes. She was 23, furious, standing in my old living room with a packed suitcase and a man I barely knew waiting by the door. She told me I was controlling, outdated, that love shouldn't come with lectures. Then she blocked my number before her car turned the corner. I remember standing in the driveway, holding my phone like a useless relic, watching her tail lights disappear into the rain. Since then, life shrank to what fit inside 4 walls and a garden. I retired from the postal service at 65, kept the same routine. Coffee at dawn, crossword at 7, errands before the Florida heat set in. The silence became a kind of companion. You start talking to the television just to hear your own voice answering back. I sent letters for the first 5 years. None came back opened. By year 10, I stopped sending them. What do you say to someone who's decided you're better left unread? I told myself I'd made peace with it, though peace felt more like surrender dressed up in manners. Then one Saturday morning, while I was trimming the hibiscus by the porch, the old landline rang. It startled me, not because of the sound, but because no one used that number anymore. My friends had all switched to cell phones or passed on. I wiped the sweat from my neck, stepped inside, and answered. "Hello?" Silence at first. Then a voice I'd memorized before she'd even learned to walk. "Dad?" My grip on the receiver tightened. For a moment, I thought my mind was playing one of its cruel tricks, the kind that replays things you wish you'd done differently. But it was her. Older, rougher around the edges, yet still her. "I know this is sudden," she said. "I wouldn't call if it wasn't important." 15 years of words pressed behind my teeth, but none came out. All I managed was her name, soft and uncertain, like testing a note you're not sure you can still hit. "I need your help," she continued. "There's some paperwork from Mom's estate. I can't move forward without your signature." My signature. 2 words that somehow weighed more than the 15 silent years between us. I told her to come by the house. She hesitated. I heard the pause, then agreed. "Tomorrow, around 3. When I hung up, the quiet returned, thicker than before. I stood there in the kitchen, the line still humming faintly, the clock ticking loud enough to fill the whole room. She was coming back, but not for reconciliation, not for forgiveness. For a signature. That night, sleep refused to stay. I walked the hallway that still carried traces of her. The faded pencil marks on the door frame measuring her height. The framed picture from her high school graduation. Time hadn't erased her from this house. It had only coated everything in dust. By morning, I'd convinced myself to be calm. Whatever she needed, I'd listen. Maybe this was fate's strange way of giving us one last conversation. But beneath the hope sat something colder, a feeling I hadn't admitted even to myself. After 15 years of being invisible, I finally had something she needed. And I wasn't sure what that said about either of us. She arrived on a Sunday afternoon that felt too bright for something so heavy. The sun poured through the magnolia branches, making the air shimmer. I'd spent the morning pretending to tidy, straightening the sofa cushions, polishing the coffee table, dusting frames that hadn't been touched in months. Really, I was rehearsing how to act like a man whose heart didn't ache at the sound of his own front door opening. The car eased into the driveway exactly at 3. I watched from the window, unseen. She stepped out first, then a man followed, tall, confident. The kind of smile you put on when you expect to be welcomed. He carried a leather folder. She carried herself like someone trying to remember the steps to an old dance. When the knock came, I waited 3 slow breaths before answering. "Hi, Dad." Her voice was cautious, polite, stripped of warmth but not entirely cold. "Come in," I said, moving aside. My tone sounded steadier than I felt. She crossed the threshold like the house itself might judge her. The man offered his hand. "Daniel," he said. "Your son-in-law." His grip was firm, his eyes scanned the room, quick and calculating, taking in the modest furniture, the photos on the walls, the lack of wealth worth coveting. We made small talk that went nowhere, traffic, the weather, the yard that needed trimming. I brought out lemonade because it felt like something a father should offer, though my hands trembled slightly when I poured. They sat side by side on the couch, close but not connected. Daniel opened the folder. "We won't take much of your time. It's a simple matter regarding property transfer from your late wife's estate, purely procedural." I nodded, eyes on the papers while he talked. Legal words blurred together, transfer, authorization, co-sign, witness. I didn't sign, not yet. "I'd like to read it through first," I said. "Of course," he replied, smile tightening. My daughter sipped her lemonade, gaze wandering to the framed photo of her 10th birthday, missing tooth frosting on her cheek, my arm around her shoulders. She looked away quickly. "How's work?" I asked gently. "Oh, you know, busy." The answer came too fast. "And you, Daniel?" "I manage investments," he said. The words sounded rehearsed. Silence stretched. The old wall clock filled it with its stubborn ticking. I watched them without letting it show, her posture too rigid, his too relaxed. He kept one hand on her knee, a gesture that looked less affectionate than possessive. I thought of the argument years ago, the way she defended the man I'd never met. Maybe it was him. Maybe someone like him. Either way, history had a way of rhyming. When I excused myself to fetch more ice, I took the folder with me under the pretense of clearing space. In the kitchen, I set it on the counter, opened it carefully. Beneath the top page labeled Transfer Authorization was another half-hidden. A quitclaim deed naming Daniel as sole owner of my late wife's small rental property. My daughter's name appeared only once as witness. I closed the folder before they noticed how long I'd been gone. Back in the living room, Daniel was complimenting the house. "You kept it in great shape," he said. "Not many people your age manage that." I smiled faintly. 40 years of habit. Hard to stop maintaining what's yours. He didn't catch the undertone. She did. Her eyes flicked toward me, searching, then dropped. After another half hour of polite circling, I suggested dinner. "Nothing fancy, roast chicken and vegetables. It'll give us time to talk properly." Daniel hesitated, then agreed. "Sure, we'd love to." While they unpacked their overnight bags from the car, I set the table for 3. I hadn't planned to, but something in me wanted her to stay, if only to measure the distance between us in real time instead of memory. Dinner passed like a delicate negotiation. Daniel spoke about real estate trends, how smart investors knew when to move assets. My daughter barely ate. I asked gentle questions, her health, whether she still played piano. Each answer came short, rehearsed. When dessert plates were cleared, Daniel suggested we wrap up the paperwork. I told him the evening light was poor for reading fine print, and that I'd prefer to look it over tomorrow morning in my study. He forced another smile. "Of course, tomorrow then." They retired to the guest room, her old room, though the posters and trophies were gone. I heard muffled voices through the wall later, his sharp, hers pleading. I pretended not to hear. Around midnight, I walked the hallway, pausing by her door. A sliver of light leaked from beneath it, thin and uncertain like hope itself. I stood there a long moment, listening to nothing but the sound of two people breathing on opposite sides of a bed that had once been hers alone. Back in my room, I set the folder on my desk, switched on the lamp, and began reading line by line, slow and methodical. Years of sorting mail had trained me to notice details others missed, the fine print, the names in small font. By the second page, I knew this wasn't about property management. It was about ownership, about control. I leaned back, the chair creaking softly, and stared at the shadowed ceiling. 15 years of silence, and now they'd come not for reconciliation, but for permission. Still, anger didn't come, only a tired sort of clarity. Maybe this was the only way she knew how to reach me now, through something that required my name in ink. And if that was the bridge she offered, I'd walk across it carefully. Just not blind. Morning came slow, the way it does after a night that never really ended. The house felt heavier somehow, as if the air itself remembered the arguments whispered through its walls. I brewed coffee the way I always did, 2 scoops, no sugar, and set out 3 mugs, though only 2 would be used. Old habits don't retire, they linger, waiting for reasons to matter again. The guest room door opened right on cue. My daughter stepped out first, hair pulled back, eyes tired but painted into brightness. Behind her came Daniel, crisp shirt, polite grin already in place. They looked like travelers passing through a station they didn't plan to remember. "Sleep well?" I asked. "Fine, Dad, thanks for letting us stay," she said. Her voice was warm enough to pass for sincerity if you didn't know what 15 years of silence sounded like. Daniel unfolded a casual laugh. "We should finish that paperwork today. I know you're busy." I nodded, carried the coffee to the table. The sunlight came through the curtains, soft and forgiving. It reminded me of mornings when she was small. Cereal commercials humming on the TV, her feet swinging from the kitchen stool, her laughter filling every quiet corner. I caught myself smiling, then saw the folder sitting there between us like a loaded question, and the smile fell away. He talked while she stared at her cup. I barely listened. My eyes kept tracing the edge of her wedding ring, thin gold dulled by time. When she noticed, she tucked her hand under the table. Guilt has a language you learn only after raising someone. "I went over the documents last night," I said finally. "Some of the clauses confused me. Maybe you can explain." Daniel straightened. "Of course. It's just legal phrasing. The property title moves into my management temporarily to streamline." "Temporarily?" I interrupted softly. "It says permanent transfer." The silence that followed wasn't loud, but it carried weight. My daughter's fingers tightened around her mug. Daniel's eyes stayed steady, his smile thinner now. "That's standard," he said. "Easier for taxes, nothing changes in practice." I let his words hang there, nodding slowly as if considering. Inside, something ached, not anger yet, just the hollow awareness that deception had traveled here under my daughter's name. When they went out to make a phone call, I wandered to the back porch. The garden looked the same as ever, uneven grass. The bird bath tilted from last week's storm, the ordinary beauty of things that expect nothing from you. I leaned on the railing, coffee cooling in my hand, and tried to make sense of the balance between love and disappointment. I'd always believed distance could keep love safe, that even unspoken it might wait intact until the day someone reached for it again. But watching her now, avoiding my eyes, letting another man speak for her, I realized distance hadn't preserved anything. It had only starved it. When they returned, I pretended to study the paperwork again, asking harmless questions about notarization and delivery. Daniel answered too quickly. She stayed silent, eyes fixed on the floor. Each small evasion felt like a pinprick, not deep enough to wound but enough to bleed faith slowly. After lunch, they left her to meet a lawyer downtown. I watched their car back out, the same driveway she'd sped down 15 years ago. Once the sound faded, I carried the folder to my study. The desk lamp revealed everything the sunlight tried to soften. Her signature beside his, dated 2 weeks before she called me. So it hadn't been sudden desperation. It had been planned. My throat tightened, not with rage, but with the quiet grief that comes when memory collides with truth. I sat there a long while, fingers pressed against the paper as if it might pulse, as if it still had a heartbeat I could recognize. Eventually, I picked up the phone, not to call her, but to call an old friend who'd once worked in real estate law. "Tom," I said when he answered, "I need you to look at something for me. No rush. But I'd rather know where I stand before I make a mistake." He promised to drop by tomorrow. After I hung up, I walked through the house, touching the edges of old photographs, the traces of a family that used to believe in permanence. In one frame, she was 8, missing a tooth, holding up a sandcastle we'd built together. I remembered the way she'd run back to fix a collapsed wall, refusing to let the tide take it. Standing there, I wondered when she'd stop trying to rebuild things. Night came early. I left the porch light on out of habit, though I knew they wouldn't return until morning. The folder sat closed on the desk again, but its weight lingered everywhere, in the walls, in the ache behind my ribs, in the sound of my own breathing filling the empty rooms. I told myself I'd wait, listen, give her a chance to explain. But deep down, I already understood the shape of what tomorrow would bring. It wasn't just her husband's plan written in that fine print. It was her silence, inked neatly beside his name. Tom came by the next morning just as the clouds were thinning, after a night of soft rain. He was older than I remembered, gray at the temples, same calm eyes that used to steady me back when we both delivered mail along the same route. I handed him the folder without a word. He skimmed it once, twice, then exhaled through his nose. "Not just a signature, huh?" "No," I said. "She'd be signing you out of ownership completely, classic consolidation maneuver. Whoever drafted this knew what they were doing." I nodded. Hearing it confirmed by someone else didn't make it sting less. "Can you fix it?" "Easily," he said. "Just don't sign. Let them show their cards first." When he left, I watched the street glisten from the rain, the way puddles mirrored the clouds. There was a strange calm inside me, a sense of final clarity. Yet beneath it, something softer stirred, not anger, not pride. Just sorrow for the girl who used to hand me wildflowers through the back fence, telling me they were for Mom, but you can hold them till she wakes up. By noon, the car returned. She got out alone this time. Daniel stayed in the driver's seat, talking loudly into his phone. She came up the steps hesitantly, like the ground itself might reject her. "Dad," she said, almost whispering, "can we talk without him for a minute?" "Of course." I stepped aside. Inside, she looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders drawn, eyes rimmed red. She held a mug of coffee I'd poured before realizing she wouldn't drink it. "I'm sorry about yesterday," she said. "Daniel can be persistent. He just wants things settled." "Persistent?" I repeated quietly. "Is that what you call it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she traced the rim of the mug, eyes fixed on the movement. The silence stretched until it started to tremble, then softly. "He's under a lot of pressure. Business stuff. I thought helping would calm him down. By giving away what's left of your mother's house." Her lip quivered. "I didn't think you'd notice." I smiled faintly. "You used to say that when you'd steal cookies before dinner." That broke something in her. A sound left her throat, half laugh, half sob. "I don't know how to fix this," she said. "You start by telling the truth." She wiped her eyes. "We're drowning, Dad. His company's gone. The debt collectors keep calling. He said if we put everything in his name, it would buy time." I knew it was wrong. I just didn't want another fight. The words came out in pieces like she was afraid each one might shatter on the floor. I listened quietly, letting her unravel. "When you called yesterday," I said, "was it his idea or yours?" "His," she admitted. "But I wanted to see you. I just didn't know how to come without a reason." That one landed hard. All the anger I'd rehearsed dissolved into something gentler. Pity mixed with old love. From the window we could see Daniel pacing near the car, gesturing with his phone, his voice sharp even through the glass. She flinched every time it rose. "You don't have to go back out there right now," I said. "Lunch is almost ready. Stay a while." She hesitated, then nodded. We ate in near silence. I talked about the garden, the neighborhood, the weather, small harmless things that didn't ask for forgiveness or offer it. Every few minutes she glanced toward the window, like checking the time of an approaching storm. When Daniel finally came in, the mask slipped back over her face. She sat straighter, smiled mechanically. He asked if I'd looked over the documents again. I told him Tom was reviewing them and that I wouldn't sign anything until next week. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "Next week might be too late for us, sir." "Then it's already too late," I said softly. He forced a laugh. "You're cautious. I respect that." I didn't answer. My daughter kept her eyes on her plate, jaw tight. That evening, after they'd gone to their room, I stood outside their door again, hearing low voices, the sharp hiss of accusation, the muffled sobs that followed. I wanted to intervene, but I knew forcing the issue would only make her defend him harder. Some lessons can't be taught by lecture. They have to collapse under their own weight. I went back to the porch. The night air smelled of wet earth and jasmine. I thought about how easily love can turn into something else, fear, loyalty, habit. How sometimes the only way to protect someone is to wait quietly while they realize they need saving. When I finally went to bed, I left the porch light on again. Not as a signal this time, but as a promise. If she decided to walk out that door, she wouldn't have to do it in the dark. I woke early the next morning, sunlight slipping between the blinds and settling on the floorboards like something gentle that didn't want to wake the house. For a long while, I just sat on the edge of the bed listening to the quiet breathing from down the hall. Even silence sounded different now, less like distance, more like waiting. I'd spent most of the night thinking. Every possible version of the conversation I wanted to have, every version of the one I knew would actually happen. But in the end, the plan I formed wasn't about confrontation. It was about time, about giving her a stretch of days long enough to remember who she used to be before fear and debt taught her to measure love in signatures. At breakfast, I told them I'd decided to wait before signing anything. "It's too important to rush," I said. "Stay for the week. Let's use the time to catch up. You can help me around the place. I could use company." Daniel frowned immediately. "We really should wrap this up, sir." But she looked almost relieved. "A week sounds good," she said quickly. "We could use the break." That surprised him, though he tried not to show it. I poured coffee into 3 mugs and smiled. Then it settled. The first day passed awkwardly. Daniel spent most of it on the phone outside, his voice rising and falling like waves against the siding. My daughter helped me prune the magnolia tree. She worked quietly, clumsy with the shears, and after a while the rhythm of cutting and gathering started to ease the tension. "Remember when you used to hide under this tree during thunderstorms?" I asked. She smiled faintly. You told me the branches would keep the sky from finding me. And did it work? It did back then. Her voice softened. I thought you could fix anything. The sentence caught in the air between us, fragile as the petals she was collecting. I didn't answer. Sometimes silence protects better than words. By the third day, Daniel had grown restless. He complained about the Wi-Fi, about the lack of good restaurants nearby, about everything that wasn't his idea. Each complaint made her shrink a little more. That night, when he drove into town for a meeting, she lingered on the porch with me, wrapped in one of her mother's old quilts. He hates waiting, she said. Most people do, I replied. She looked out at the dark yard. You don't. I spent 40 years sorting mail. Waiting's what I do best. She laughed quietly, and for a moment I saw the child who used to fall asleep on my shoulder after long road trips, trusting I'd get us home. The sound of her laughter reached something inside me I thought had gone numb. The next morning I cooked pancakes the way her mother used to. Too much butter, edges crisp. She ate slowly as if tasting memory. Daniel walked in halfway through, irritated that we'd started without him. The warmth vanished as quickly as it came. When he stepped outside again, I turned to her. I know about the second deed, I said softly. You don't need to lie anymore. Her eyes widened, panic and shame colliding. Dad, I'm not angry, I interrupted. I just need you to know that I see you, all of it. The fear, the choices, I see them. Tears gathered but didn't fall. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I know. I placed my hand over hers. You've spent so long surviving that you forgot how to live without permission. She stared at our joined hands, then whispered, Why are you being kind to me after everything? Because kindness was the last thing your mother asked me to keep. We stayed like that a while. No speeches, no promises, just the small weight of understanding pressing against old scars. Over the next few days, I kept the routine simple, morning chores, shared meals, quiet evenings. I didn't mention the documents again. Instead, I let time do what it does best when you stop fighting it, soften edges. She started humming while washing dishes, leaving the door open when she stepped onto the porch, asking questions about neighbors she barely remembered. The house sounded alive again. Daniel, though, sensed the shift. On the 6th night, he cornered me in the hallway. You're playing games, he said, voice low. Dragging this out. I'm spending time with my daughter, I replied. You should try it. He sneered, stepped closer. You think you can turn her against me? I met his gaze evenly. I think truth doesn't need turning, it just needs light. For a heartbeat, I thought he might lash out, but he didn't. He walked away, muttering something I chose not to catch. When the door to their room closed, I felt the air shift again. Tomorrow was the 7th day. The day I'd promised myself I'd decide. I looked toward the living room where the document sat untouched beneath a paperweight shaped like a lighthouse. The irony wasn't lost on me. A beacon keeping people safe from crashing into the same rocks, shining only because someone had the sense to stay on shore. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window watching the porch light burn against the dark, wondering if she'd ever understand that the week hadn't been a delay. It had been an invitation to remember who she was when love wasn't measured in ink. Tomorrow I would tell her my decision, and this time my signature would mean something entirely different. Morning arrived clear and cool, the kind of Florida morning that pretends it never knew humidity. I brewed coffee before anyone stirred and carried it to the porch. The air smelled of wet cedar and promise. Today was decision day, though the decision had been made long before sunrise. When I finally called them to breakfast, Daniel came down first, already impatient. My daughter followed a few steps behind, hair uncombed, eyes cautious. The week had softened her. You could see it in the way she paused before speaking, as if weighing the cost of words. "I suppose this is the day," Daniel said, sliding the folder onto the table. "We appreciate your hospitality, but we really must be getting on with things." I nodded. "You're right. Things should be settled." I set 2 envelopes on the table, one thick, one thin, and took my seat opposite them. "Before we finish, I'd like you both to hear something." Daniel exhaled through his nose, impatient. "Sir, with respect." "With respect," I interrupted gently. "You'll want to listen." I turned to my daughter. "Do you remember your mother's will? The part about the property being a place for family, not profit?" She hesitated. "I think so." "I do," I said. "That's why I went to the county office yesterday." Daniel's smile faltered. "You, what?" I slid the thicker envelope toward them. "Inside is the new deed. The house now belongs to the Bailey Family Trust. It can't be sold or transferred. It's protected for the next generation, your future child, if you ever have one." Silence expanded across the table. My daughter stared at the envelope, as though it might vanish. Daniel's color rose. "You had no right." "I had every right," I said quietly. "It was mine to give, not yours to take." He pushed back his chair, half rising. "This is ridiculous." "Sit down," my daughter whispered, surprising both of us. Her voice shook, but it held. He glared at her, then dropped into the seat. I opened the second envelope, the thin one, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "You asked for my signature," I said, sliding it across. "You have it." Daniel grabbed it, eyes darting over the page, then confusion replaced anger. "This isn't the deed." "No," I said. "It's a notarized letter stating that I've fulfilled every obligation of your request. It says I've provided my signature exactly as asked." He read aloud, voice tight. "I, Thomas Bailey, affirm that my signature has been rendered in good faith and final." What is this supposed to mean? "It means our business is concluded." My daughter looked up then, eyes glassy. "You knew," she whispered. "I knew," I said. "But I also knew you needed a week of remembering before I could sign anything. I wanted you to see who you were without him telling you." Daniel stood again, chair legs scraping. "We're leaving." "No one's stopping you," I said. "The trust documents are filed. Copies are with my attorney. You can fight them if you like, but you'll find the law is very patient." He muttered something sharp and turned toward the hallway. My daughter didn't follow. She stayed seated, fingers tracing the edge of the letter. When the front door closed behind him, the house seemed to exhale. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said finally. "I just didn't know how to come back." "I know," I answered, "but you can still choose what kind of person you'll be when you go forward." She wiped her eyes. "You really put it in a trust?" "I did." I smiled faintly. "Your mother always wanted that place to protect someone. Now it will." She looked toward the window where sunlight moved across the table, catching the dust in the air. "You think I can start over?" "You already have," I said. "Starting over just means stopping long enough to see where you are." She laughed through her tears, a small broken sound that felt more honest than any apology. "You always were impossible to outsmart." "Not impossible," I said, "just stubborn." We spent the rest of the morning packing her things. Daniel's car was gone. She called a cab instead. When it arrived, she hugged me for the first time in 15 years. It wasn't dramatic. No tears, no speeches, just a long, quiet embrace that smelled of rain and forgiveness trying to grow. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "Maybe not yet," I said, "but you might someday." After she left, the house returned to stillness. I carried the empty coffee cups to the sink and looked at the faint handprint she'd left on the counter. It would fade by evening, but I didn't wipe it away. Some marks deserve to stay a while. I sat down at the kitchen table, the two envelopes still lying there. The one for her, the one for me. A balance sheet of love and consequence. I traced my name at the bottom of that notarized page, the ink already dry. So many years I'd imagined hearing her voice again. I never thought it would sound like this, fragile, humbled, searching. The quiet felt lighter now, not empty but waiting. Somewhere maybe there was still a road back to each other. But for today, dignity would have to be enough. The days that followed slipped by quietly, each one folding into the next like pages I wasn't in a hurry to finish. The house felt lighter, though emptier. I watered the garden, walked to the mailbox every morning, cooked more than I could eat. Habit mostly. Habit and hope have the same rhythm when you're old enough to tell them apart only by how they end the day. A week after she left, a small envelope arrived. No return address, just my name written in a hand I'd recognize anywhere. The letters were careful, as if she'd practiced them before sealing the flap. For a moment I only held it, feeling the weight that wasn't really weight at all, just the gravity of 15 years finding its way home. I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where everything had begun again, and opened it with the old brass letter opener my wife once called my wand of bad news. The paper inside smelled faintly of her perfume, lighter than memory. "Dad," it began, "I don't know if you'll ever want to hear from me again, but I need to try. I left Daniel. I've started working again. Nothing glamorous but honest. The apartment's small and I sleep better here. I keep thinking about that week, about the pancakes and the porch light. About the way you looked at me without judgment when I didn't deserve it. I'm sorry. I can't undo what I did. But I want to understand how to be the kind of person Mom would have been proud of." The rest of the letter was uneven, hope and guilt fighting for space on the same page. She wrote that she'd found a counselor, that she was learning how fear makes us choose people who promise safety while stealing it. She asked if she could visit sometime soon when you're ready. I read it 3 times before setting it down. Outside, the afternoon light drifted through the magnolia leaves, scattering patterns on the table. The house didn't seem so still anymore. It felt like it was listening. I took out a fresh sheet of paper and started a reply, stopping often to think. "Dear girl," I wrote, because that's what I used to call her when she was small and unbroken by the world. "Thank you for writing. The porch light's still on. That's all the invitation you need." I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and left it on the desk, beside the photo of her mother smiling under the same magnolia tree. I didn't mail it right away. Some things need to sit in the open a while before they're ready to travel. That evening I sat outside with a cup of coffee gone cold and watched the sky fade from blue to violet. The first stars appeared one by one like promises that kept showing up no matter how many nights they'd been forgotten. I thought about how forgiveness isn't an act. It's a place you walk toward slowly, step by step, until you realize you've already arrived. The phone lay on the table beside me. For the first time in 15 years, her number wasn't something I avoided. I didn't dial it, not yet. I just let it glow softly in the screen's reflection. Proof that connection, once lost, could still wait patiently for the right moment. A breeze moved through the yard, carrying the faint scent of jasmine. Somewhere, a mockingbird practiced another creature's song. I smiled at that, the way it borrowed voices and made them its own. Maybe that's what love does after all the noise fades. It learns a quieter tune, one that sounds a little like forgiveness and a little like home. I finished my coffee, left the porch light burning, and whispered into the dusk, "See you soon, sweetheart." The night didn't answer, but the silence felt different now. Less empty, more expectant. If this story touched your heart, don't leave just yet. Hit that like button. It helps these stories reach someone who might need to hear them tonight. And tell me in the comments, when was the last time you forgave someone? Or were forgiven yourself? I read every message, and your stories mean more than you know.